Well, welcome and thank you. It's so good to see familiar faces and unfamiliar faces, and I'm putting names to faces today. On behalf of me, my brothers, and our extended family, we're just so thankful that you guys chose to come today to honor my dad. See if I can get through this. So thank you for joining us in a celebration of the long and prolific life of Harvey Barnett Jones. My dad had many names and wore many hats. Older friends and family members know him as Barney, short for his middle name, Barnett. Newer friends call him Harvey, a later in life decision, just to avoid the Barney rubble and Barney the dinosaur jokes. He just thought it was easier. He's got a lot of different names. Some of them you may know of, some you probably haven't. Here's just a few of them in no particular order. Grandpa, Papacito, Abuelo, Uncle Barney, Mr. Jones, that's his teacher name, Mr. Magoo, that's self-titled, Peak Bagger, some of you might recognize that term, dancer, humorist, writer, storyteller, backcountry skier, and hiker. And there's probably a few more. I know they could probably come up with some more. He was a legacy in our family. And to quote my daughter, the end of an era for our family. He is also a tough act to follow. Unlike me, he was quite the extrovert. And his connection with people, especially his friends and family, were most important. Being out in nature and moving his body felt a big part of his life. This and his love for learning new things kept his mind and body sharp and fit. He remained proactive in the face of heart disease, skin cancer, and loss of vision, and conquered many peaks, mastered many dance moves, and published many books. A legacy whose absence is deeply felt and will be missed forever. I have two other things. My Aunt Claire could not be here. She lives in Colorado, and there it is. So she wanted me to read, and then I have something from one of his other friends too. My Aunt Claire Jones Graham wrote this. Claire is the last survivor of Barney and his 4 siblings. Since she can't be here in person, she offered to share some memories of her times with her brother. Barney was not only really good about sharing his life adventures, both verbally and written, but also his time with us. When my sisters Catherine and Bessie and I were young, we were always excited when our brothers Barney and Bill, who were 9 and 14 years older, would come home to visit. We would sit on the front porch at our house on Main Street in Buffalo, Wyoming, waiting to see them and hear about their activities. They were our heroes. When I was older and Barney was living in Denver, I was invited by him to visit. Knowing he wanted to take me skiing, our mother took some old winter clothes out of a trunk, little pants and a jacket for me to wear on the slopes. Barney took me to the bunny slope to show me how to make a V with my skis, and took off to the expert slopes. He turned in to check on me from time to time. I had a good time trying to ski, and also spent a lot of time learning how to get up in the snow. After a day of skiing, Barney discovered his car wouldn't start and was able to get a jump from 2 friends of his while I watched in my old outfit. I then heard him wondering if his friends noticed my antique pants and jacket and hoping they did not. As if a day of skiing wasn't enough, that evening he took me to the Blue Blaze in Denver, a polka dance, and taught me how to polka. I guess I did okay because we kept at it, so his dancing days started a long time ago. When Barney was in the Air Force, they sent him to Syracuse, New York to learn Russian. He invited our parents to fly to New York to visit him, and I think might have helped pay for their tickets. I went to see my parents off the plane, and I wrote in my diary that my parents seemed very nervous about getting on the plane because Mom was hastily eating crackers and Dad was clicking his false teeth. I thought it was so great of Barney to invite them. This was during the Cold War, and he was then sent to Europe to translate Russian communications. When Barney got home from Europe, he brought with him a VW Volkswagen Bug that he had bought in Germany and shipped home. It was quite a sight, and the first time we Buffalo folks had seen a VW Bug. I was pleased that Barney actually let me drive it and saw it off to my friends. After I completed college and had a career, the first car I bought was, you guessed it, a VW Bug. The Jones family reunion. Sometime in the 80s, we all gathered at Barney's home in California for our family reunion. In retrospect, I think that Barney would have felt that he was crazy to do it. Imagine 2 sisters and their 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, most of them teenagers. Also, our special Down syndrome sister, Bessie, our brother Bill and wife Ella, and Barney and his 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. I don't remember where we all fit in Barney's house, but I do remember that I knocked a bottle of shampoo into the toilet while hurrying to go to Barney's rec center to swim. When we got back to the house, we learned that I had broken the toilet and I knocked off the bottle. Barney was not happy, and I didn't blame him. Later, we discovered that sweet Bessie had been sneaking beer out of the refrigerator and drinking it. Who knows what all the teenagers were up to, or their 2 single sisters. We all survived it, and Barney got his toilet fixed. This turned out to be one of the most fun and memorable family reunions I attended. Although I didn't get to California to visit as often as I wanted to, I won't forget the times we had together. I miss his sense of humor, the phone visits, and his books, and my brother Barney. Thank you for letting me share. And then one more, and I'll pass the mic. This one is from his friend Kathy Masters, who could not make it today, but she had some memories she wanted me to relate. The Tahoe Half Marathon. Barney was 86 years old. I was his guide up to Snow Valley Peak that year, through Ski for Light, 14 round trip with 2,200 elevation gain. On that hike, Barney told me he wanted to do this half marathon again, but didn't have anyone to do it with him. So I said I would. During that half marathon, I had to use the porta potty and told Barney to keep going, that I would catch up with him. I wasn't in that porta potty 90 seconds, and when I came out, Barney was nowhere in sight. I had to pick up my pace and run all the way out to catch up with him. He was my inspiration, and my goal is to be like him and be doing half marathons and hiking peaks when I am in my 80s. During another Ski for Light hiking weekend at Claire Tapan, a group of us decided to bike up to Mount Judah. The previous night there was a snowstorm, so some of the trails were covered. I was guiding a person who was much slower than Barney and his guide. I had to get back to Claire Tapan at a certain time to take a group to Sacramento Amtrak. When we got to the top of Mount Judah, I asked Barney's guide if we could switch hikers. Since I had never done this hike before and was unfamiliar with the trail that I couldn't even find since parts were covered in snow. Barney guided me down, the visually impaired leading the guided. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures from that. I always enjoyed watching him dance and looked forward to his invitations to each of his dance events. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. This is great to see everybody. And, just listening to what Julia was saying, he's got so many different groups that he's interacted with over the years. And it's just wonderful to see. And I remember that little VW bug, and him telling stories about driving it from New York back to Buffalo. And he said it seemed like at every stop, people would stop and ask him what it was and want to look at the engine. So he'd open the front trunk for them, which was nothing. I just thought that was the greatest thing. He was also very pragmatic because rear wheel drive did great in the snow. He was a little ahead of his time on that. Got a couple things to talk about. I don't know if any of you saw the folder on the front desk, but it basically says, read this if you're sad, right? And I didn't see that till after he passed, and it was laid down in his desk drawer. So I thought this is a good time for that. I'll read a few jokes. These ones came from 1997 that I think I had actually emailed him, but he's got a whole big file of them. So I look forward to reading those as a way to remember them as we gather in the future. And you don't feel obligated to laugh. All right. When someone asks you a penny for your thoughts and you put your 2 cents in, what happens to the other penny? Why are a wise man and a wise guy opposites? Could it be that I do is the longest sentence? If lawyers are disbarred and clergymen are defrocked, doesn't it follow that electricians can be delighted, musicians denoted, cowboys deranged, models deposed, tree surgeons debarked, and dry cleaners depressed? He and I share that sense of humor to this day. Anywhere I can make a pun, I do it. There's a bunch more, but those are the ones I wanted to kind of warm up to. The story I have for me kind of personifies who he was, especially as my father, as a grandfather, and so forth. This was I think he was in his mid-70s, maybe 73, 74. And it was a huge mountain biker. It's been my passion like skiing was for him. I was in top shape, about 35 years old or whatever it was, young and fast. We had Dustin, his nephew, Brock, another nephew with us. And we decided to go mountain biking. We were all staying up at Dad's house in Truckee. I can't remember the name of the trail I picked, but it was about 2,500 plus vertical feet on a pretty rutty road. And then on the way down, it had drops and rocks and you name it in the way. It was not an easy trail. We never saw Dustin and Brock again. They were young enough that they just bounced when they, fell. My brother Jordan and I kind of kept pace, and then Dad was there making steady progress. And I'd stop and check every now and then. He was fine. And we get to the bottom, and he didn't show up. And I thought, okay, I'll go back and check one more time. And I found him. He'd taken a header over the bars. He'd endoed over the bars, and had lost kind of direction of the trail. He hadn't been on it before. So we connected up. Don't look at Amelia, she's crying. I've always been envious of people who could cry and talk at the same time. Anyway. He got back on his bike, and we went to the parking lot. It was down by Donner Pass, and we were all kind of thirsty and wanted to get a snack, so we stopped at a 7-Eleven. And we all kind of came in and got our stuff, and Dad was still in there. He was getting some water or something. And we didn't think anything of it and came out. And he came out a little later and he said, so, he said, I was in there and standing in line, and I saw this lady grab her children and pull her back from me. And then he like looked around and go, why is that? And then he saw a couple, like 3 other people in the store just kind of staring at him a little warily. And if y'all know him well enough, especially when he was up in Truckee, he wore a lot of sunblock. Like a lot. Enough that, it was so hard not to go and rub in all the spots on the wrist, every time I went. And that sunblock attracts a lot of dirt. And you probably also know that he had a very certain style of dressing. And especially, some of you might remember he used to buy, because he was very pragmatic and very bargain conscious, he would buy old disco shirts to ski in because they were polyester and they were only $1. So you could spot them a mile away for those shirts. And then, he had other stuff that he wore, and if you looked at him overall on that particular day, it would have been hard to tell he wasn't someone, that was homeless and just didn't have access to, anything, showers and that. So when he got home, he realized that he just looked horrible. And that we finally figured out that the reason that, that everyone was so, wary was just because how he looked, just coated in dirt, little ragged on the clothes, So that's one of, I think many stories like that. But what it does for me is it kind of illustrates a few parts of his life. Number one, he was not a mountain biker. Number two, he was in his mid-70s, and I took him on a bike trail that was hard for me. And he didn't ever hem or haw. He made it up fine. 2,500 feet on a mountain bike's tough. He made it down, didn't complain. He was careful, right? And the thing I remembered, thought of much later was, I took that completely for granted. It just, even a few years ago, it didn't occur to me to say anything other than, hey, let's go, we're going on a hike. We're doing that. I think shortly after that, he stopped mountain biking with me. So, there's probably a connection there, but just the fact that he was so willing to go. But it just sums up, just how he kept going. And I think my brother Will's going to talk a little more about that, but, he is truly an inspiration for us and something to look forward to. And, big shoes to fill. All right.
If I do it like this? Okay, I'll try and do that. So my name is Will. I'm Harvey, Barney, Dad's youngest son. We've already heard a lot of stories, but what I wanted to talk about was how something about my dad I was just amazed as he was the master of the pivot. Just going one direction and then something changes and it's like, instead of giving everything a change. So I wanted to share kind of a couple examples of that. One, and some of this is mostly from my memory, so maybe it's not completely accurate, but when he used to run a lot when I was younger, that was kind of one of his main exercises, and he started having knee pains and went to the doctor, and doctor's like, yeah, not so good for your knees. And so, you know, instead of it's like, all right, I'll just stop exercising, he really started embracing the skiing and hiking, and he
And
just
race walking.
and race walking, if you've ever seen it, but and like swimming, he would go swimming during the summer, which is really good. So, you know, he had that first pivot that I remember of just like, all right, can't do that, I'll just switch over and still keep moving. And when I was 10, my parents, my dad and mom got divorced, and obviously a big pivot for him. But I remember that he initially moved out of the house, and for about a year, but he was back on the weekends working in the garage doing stuff, and he really wanted to be around the kids and the family, and so he ended up switching, and he moved back home. And so, you know, something I'm sure he never imagined, becoming a single parent of 4 kids on a teacher's salary, and you know, just taking care of the house, taking care of us, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, and just all that stuff. And for most of my high school years, it was just the 2 of us. We were just kind of roommates. Everyone else had grown up and left and got married, and one of my chores, if you will, was he would say, okay, Wednesday nights you make dinner. And that was something, okay, you've got to do that. He would pick the recipe for me, so I didn't have to go through that drama that we do every week that we hate, like this is the rest of our life, we're picking groceries all the time. And but I remember like looking back, I mean, that really started my interest in cooking, and I'm the family cook now at home, and I enjoy it. It's like one of my favorite things, and it was, I think it all comes back to just being, well, forced at the time to do it, but it just, you know, it simplified it for him and made it, you know, reachable, I think is the right word. And you know, part of that is just he was a real good role model for being self-sufficient and independent, and just kind of keep going, and just very responsible. You know, he was just very dependable and responsible, and of course you don't realize it when you're growing up, but looking back at it, it stood out so much. He was spending so much time up in the mountains, it just became his love that he ended up moving up to Truckee, where he spent about 20 years. But in I think it was his early 80s, I remember him talking about how he's like, you know, I like skiing, but boy, it's just so cold. My body is just not handling the cold temperatures too much. And so, and because he had to keep up with like the snow, getting the snow, shoveling snow and things like that. And so, you know, well, time for another pivot, basically. He ended up moving back to the Sacramento area, Carmichael first, and then Folsom. And he moved into well, let's see, what names, a retirement community, independent living senior community, or as he wrote about in his books, the old folks home. And I remember being Brian, you probably remember me saying like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, he's gonna be around all these people that are, well, his age, but mentally not his age in my mind. And this guy, he's gonna go downhill. He's gonna find his favorite chair and get comfortable, and so I was just worried that like it would really go downhill from there. But no. So what does he do? He joins a gym. First thing he did. He would take these long walks through the shady neighborhoods, and then like on the bike trails here, started writing and publishing these books that are on the table, writing blogs, and he was just like always active. He bought a recumbent tricycle, a trike. I mean, I don't think he wanted us to call it a tricycle. A recumbent trike, 3-wheeled bike that sits low on the ground, and he would go on 25-mile rides around Folsom, Lake Natoma. He'd go all the way around Lake Natoma and go up to Folsom Lake. You know, I was worried about him finding that comfy Barca-Lounger and settling in to the end of days. And instead he actually had a custom-built shed in the parking lot of his retirement community where he stored his three-wheel bike, his trike, and so to keep it safe and dry. He was the crazy resident that the other residents would see him walking out, 98 degree summer day. They'd see him walking out with his wet cotton t-shirt on because he's walking to the gym to do his 2-hour exercise. And I remember him talking about, he's like, you can't wear polyester because it dries out too quickly. It's gotta be a cotton t-shirt because right when I get to the gym, it's just dry. It's like, he had the whole pattern down. And then he'd say and then when I'm done working out, I would go in the bathroom, get it all wet, put it back on and walk back. So eventually, as his vision continued to get worse, he really didn't feel it was safe to ride that bike because you're going pretty fast. You got to electrify, he would still pedal. He'd say, I just use it for the hills. I'm a little lazy. And then he would, excuse me. So he sold his bike because he was worried that in the shadows you couldn't see anything, and so he was worried he was going to hit an animal or a child or a person, another bike, and so he sold his bike. And time for that Barcalounger, right? No, another pivot, and his next big pivot to me was. It was to here. It was to here at Arthur Murray, where he started at age 86. 9 years of dancing with arthritis at Arthur Murray. Title of his book, TM. And this place really just became his family, his home away from home. And it just brought so much joy to him, for him. It's the reason that we're here today. It's the reason I wanted Ella to hear, because it's like, if his spirit is anywhere, it's haunting this place. And Kate couldn't be here, the owner, when I asked her, hey, can we rent your facility? Is there a day we can rent it? And she's like, no, you can use it, but you're not gonna pay rent. So I really appreciate Kate and all of you. Arthur Murray, you were so special. You guys made him feel just like a 25-year-old. So what did I learn from all these pivots? Really just keep moving, basically. That was his one thing is, movement, just keep moving. Bad knees, bad vision, arthritis, just keep moving, including keeping your mind active. That was just, as his child, of course, he's just your dad, so you're up close and you don't always see all these things, but I saw him through so many other people and these dear friends who just worshiped him. And there're just so many things that I learned from him. So if the spirit isn't haunting here, it's out in nature. That when you see the fall leaves turning, and that if you're in the mountains, that what's it called, the snow plant, that bright red plant that comes up, that green meadow, a nice snow-capped mountain peak. That's him. That's where he'll be. That's his last pivot. Okay. On to hopefully happier things. So around 2000, so about 13 years ago, he wanted to work on performing a song with my two daughters, Amelia and Miranda. It's a Bob Dylan song. What's it again? Blowing in the Wind. I was thinking Roland's. Blowing in the Wind. I don't know why that song, I was asking them, like, did you ever discuss why that song? But it's certainly, you know, a little about just moving on. But they're here to sing that for you.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? And how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? And how many years must some people exist before they're allowed to be free? And then how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
I know him as Mr. Jones. My name is Gwen, and I used to babysit the Jones children when they were little. And I remember, I don't know if you've been born yet, Will, or not, but it was right around in that time. You were little. And I'll refrain from sharing any memories, but I remember about various things that Jones children said to me when they were little. So just leave that out. But when I remember that Volkswagen, I swear, I was like, oh my God, I haven't thought of that in forever. And the names that he went by, he was a Spanish teacher, of course, and I was a pretty good, well, I was the second best Spanish teacher student in my graduating class. I'm still mad wasn't the best. Cayetano Earls got that one. But he knew me as, he gave all of his Spanish names, and my name's Gwen, and so he went for the Spanish name Guadalupe, and it was Lupita. And when he and the kid's mother at the time, Gay, they sang in choir at the Carmichael Presbyterian Church, and he'd go to choir practice on Wednesday or Thursday nights, and that's when I babysat. And every week Mr. Jones would say, "Puede cuidar niños esta noche?" And I'd always say, "Sí," and that would be that. And I would cuidar niños that night until the next week. And there were other names that he was known by in high school, other than Mr. Jones. He was also known as BJ. And, or in Spanish, it was Bejota. So, and so then I lost contact with him. I grew up and, did what I did, and he did what he did. And we reconnected after I was married for briefly in the 70s, I guess. And he was still married. And well, I'm not sure if he was or not, but there was Sunday we went polka-ing, my husband and at the time and I, and the four of us would go polka. I liked to polka, and my ex-husband did not, so that did not last too long. And then he lost contact for years and years and years. I was never an outdoorsy person like he was, so there never would have been any of that. But And then the last couple of years after Facebook, of course, then I thought, I wonder what Mr. Jones is doing. And so I contacted with him, reconnected with him, and was able to visit him at the old folks home. And I guess the last thing that I want to say is I work for Placer County Child Protective Services, and when I'd have to go out on a call with Spanish-speaking family, there's laws about having to have somebody who is a certified bilingual person. Well, I am not, and I don't remember a whole lot of Spanish, but I knew enough that usually somebody in the family, a Spanish-speaking family, knew there was an Uncle Jorge or somebody. And between Uncle Jorge and we were able to take care of business. But I just really appreciate the pivot, and I will take that with me forever. The older you get, pivot's the name of the game. So.
I came from Colorado. Pay my respects. Barney was his sense of humor was just priceless. And can you not hear me? Sorry. His sense of humor was the Jones humor. Was passed on through generations and generations. Like Will Jones. My name is Mike Wood.
No, you have to tell that. Yeah.
I'll tell that later.
All right.
But anyway, last time I talked to Uncle Barney, I left him a message and said, hey, I just wanted to see how you're doing. I haven't talked to you in a while. And Uncle Barney left me a message back and said, Mike, it's good to hear you, but you need to tell me what your phone number is because I can't see. And I felt really bad, but then I just remember his tone of voice when he make his point. It sticks with me. And it's just, that was a joy with him. And we do our family reunions up in Wyoming. Did one up here. That's the last time I've been in California. It was a long time ago. And those were the funnest reunions. And I always remember, let's go polka dancing. I never learned how to polka dance. But I just wanted to just pay my respect and share a little bit with you. And last time I saw Barney was the passing of my mother. And the last thing I remember him saying is, we went out to a restaurant. He says, head him up and move him out. And that's all I got. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a couple of things about Barney. One of them, the polka dance that was just referred to, I remember that. And I knew that Barney was very physical and everything was exercise. You just didn't do anything just to do it, you did it to exercise. And that, when you're however tall I am, which is not tall at all, and you're in his arms, although he wasn't terribly tall, but if he wants to polka, by God, you are going to exercise. And so I just got thrown around the floor. It was the hardest work I ever did in my life. It was fun. But the other thing I want to mention about him is family. How wonderful he was as a dad. I don't want to do that. But he wasn't just, with his dad and with his children and the children's children and the children's children's. I mean, we're going down to many generations now, but he loved them all, and he loved everybody else in the family. He was so close to them and brought them in. My daughter was saying that if he hadn't reached out to us the way he did, I kind of lost touch with him after I got married and I had my daughter. And she didn't even know about you all the Jones families. She didn't know anything about it. And then he finally reached out one day and he said, we're going to have a family reunion in Buffalo. Why don't you come? And Julie was 10 years old. And my husband was working and we were poor, or I thought we were. So she and I took a train and got off. Then from a train, we got on a Greyhound bus and ended up in Buffalo, Wyoming at midnight or something, right opposite the Occidental Hotel, which I had heard about all my life. It was famous in Western lore in a way. It was certainly famous in Buffalo lore. But there I was reconnecting with all of the Jones family, with Barney and his kids, and it was so important. It was important to Julie, to my daughter, and it's important to my granddaughter, Claire, Sophia, and it was too important when eventually we all started having Thanksgiving dinner together every year. And it was really important to my husband. I think he was closer to the Jones family than he was to his own family in many ways. And we didn't see them all that often, but it was part of the togetherness that we had. So he brought us together. And he could be cranky sometimes, and he could be set in his ways sometimes, and he could be firm, but boy was he family. So that's it.
The skiing section of Barney's life. And David used to lead a lot of trips, and Barney would show up. He was the most dedicated skier that we had. And he did so many things for us to make our outings pleasant. We like to do like shuttles, not just go in a circle, but start on this side of the mountain and drop on the other side of the mountain. And who would show up to shuttle us back and forth with his little car, the Subaru? He was always there helping out with those kind of things. And one time, as a memory, we were out there up in the Sierras, and it was snowing, it was bad weather, and we got a little lost. So we tried to find our way back, and we did. They would find us, but we were actually one exit off that we had parked our cars. And it was like a dozen of us, and Barney kept saying in the back, "More for your money, more for your money." So he had this attitude when most people were kind of scared or tired and stuff. He just saw the positive things of it. And that was, so I have tremendous good memories from your dad and Barney, as we called him. And who skied with Barney? Just raise your hand, because I see some, but, so yes, there's a few of us.
And when I joined, Barney was already here, and I was floored to hear that he was in his late 80s and doing all of this. And then I had the sheer pleasure of him asking if I would take dance lessons with him. And so it was one night a week we would be doing a lesson with an instructor, and of course he was all smiles, laughing away, bringing humor to it, worried that he was keeping me behind, which was certainly not the case. And then we had an opportunity come up where there was a dance event in London, and there were a few of us that chose to go, and we had asked Barney, "Would you like to join us?" And he said, "Oh, I just hold you back. I'm so concerned about that." And we were all like, "We don't think that will be the case." And we got all prepared to go, and we were going, and he was like, "I can't believe I'm doing another adventure. I never thought I'd have a chance." We got to London, and he ran circles around us. He was running up escalators. I think he challenged Bobby, Kate's husband, to run up escalators. Anything we chose to do. Elevators in London. Escalators actually. Could go through the tube. Everything was up for anything we wanted to do, any kind of dinners we wanted to do. I remember we ended up getting a chance to go to one of the Broadway shows. He was right there, couldn't wait to have a Guinness beer at a pub. Having him join us made that trip so special. And I was so glad that he was able to have another adventure and a memory. He was always, I think pretty much every Wednesday and Friday dance party, that man didn't, maybe one or two dances he would sit out. He would be asking anybody to dance and be out on that dance floor, and he so looked forward to it. Such an inspiration, and I felt so privileged to be part of that in my life, in our lives.
pretty loud enough. But hello guys, I'm Gerard. So I'm one of the teachers of Harvey as well. And in behalf of all the teachers, we enjoyed Harvey here at Arthur Murray, not just in Folsom, but the whole family, a full dance community. So you said that Harvey was here for 9 years. I celebrated my 9th year anniversary to Arthur Murray. So when I first started, is actually when Harvey first started. I remember the time that he came in here, and he was actually dancing with, I don't know if you remember her, Mary Prentice. So he came in with a dance partner to begin with. And then unfortunately, I think it's just like a few months, then Mary also passed. And then I was talking to all of the teachers. I said, we gotta keep Harvey here because Harvey loves to dance, and we have to make sure that Harvey keeps dancing. So there is this time, we're in COVID time, one of the funnest memories I've ever had, because I've always be the one to kind of like set up someone to pick up Harvey. Sometimes because nobody can actually take Harvey here at the studio. So like I set him up for, like, I have to call Linda, like, hey Linda, Harvey needs a ride for a dance party. So I always do that for him because I know it's like one of the things that he enjoys the most. And then one of the funny ones is COVID time, when we had to do a kind of like a Zoom era, right? So everybody is like, we want all the students to be taking their dance lessons, even if it's still in Zoom. So I remember we were trying this out with Harvey, and then I was on the phone with Harvey for like, his dance lesson is at 1:45, I think that's with Ren. And then I was like, called Harvey at 1 o'clock to set up his Zoom in his, and of course he just had his iPad on all the time, like up until we already reached almost like 2 p.m. and it's already past his lesson time, and we're still setting up his Zoom. And then every time that he put in his login, his password, all that stuff, I have never heard Harvey say an F word. But that is the first time I've ever heard him say that. Probably the whole hour we've been trying to connect to Zoom. So that is so funny. And I was like, I remember Harvey just because of that, because he's this one type of guy that's just coming in here and just having fun and just wanting to dance, So yeah, we love Harvey here. We will miss him so much.
He was one of the sweetest people I've ever known, but I also worked at Cal Fit. And so after I met him here, I started noticing him at the gym, like, oh, that's Harvey. I didn't realize he was a member. And he would be there for 2 to 3 hours, and I was just amazed at what he would be doing, practicing his balancing. He'd be doing bicep curls with like 20, 25 pounds, and I'm just like, wow, he is an inspiration. So we loved him here.
Barney, I knew him as Barney, as well as most of you do. And I was like, wow, there's so much of him I didn't know about. So when I saw the books on the table and whatnot, everybody's like, oh my goodness. Because you have this huge, long, very active life, and I feel like I only knew like 1 page of him. If there was someone wrote a biography of him, I'd be just this one little tiny page in there, and by only 1 paragraph at the bottom of the page. There's a few folks in here, my friends, that we know him from hiking. We heard the skiers, and so some of us hikers need to speak up about our experience with Barney. So that can help, come through the picture. I also want to say before I go on to more details is that I feel so privileged and so honored to be here with you. You're all strangers to me, but I feel this is so you know, it's like it's private, it's intimate, whatever, but I feel so privileged, so blessed to be here like this. I feel your love for him, and my heart just swells with love myself for him. I always liked him, but like now I really feel the love. And when I first met Barney, it was on a Sierra Club hike, and I started hiking in the Sierra Club in the late 70s. I joined. It was like within maybe a couple of years, just a few years, I met him on one of the hikes. And I could tell he was older than me because he had like a little gray in his beard, but I had no idea how much older he was. So I was shocked that he learned he was just 3 years younger than my mother. Oh my God, you know, and she was not lucky enough to make it in her 90s. But anyway, I just want to share a few little vignettes about him that obviously you didn't have with him because it was just me and him, you know, so I shared those little bitty ones. I think probably one of the best ones was the time he told me about his trip to Mexico. He didn't tell me everything about I don't know why, I can't remember everything he said about the Mexican trip, but I always remember him going to the restaurant. He said, I went to and I had fried blood. And I think some people would be sort of like, me, I was like, yeah, tell me more about it. Because I'm adventurous in eating. I'll try almost anything. And so I was interested. And I can't remember the rest of the conversation, but his face would just be so glowing with enthusiasm. And you know what? That's one of the things about him. He's such an enthusiastic person. He has a really joy of life. This energy and this positive stuff that just comes out of him. Always so friendly and just like he's happy. He's always happy, joyous. You know, whatever he's doing, but we're always meeting in an outdoor area where there's trees and animals, or it's hiking. So like, obviously it's one of the favorite things he does in life, and I really loved it too. So like, we're in a place where we just love, you know, a place that we're gonna do things that we love. So I can see why the natural enthusiasm just come out of him, and it's just really neat to be with him. Oh, but some short little bits here and there though, because I never got beyond the intermediate level, and he was more advanced. So there's hikes you can go to where they're for the advanced, and I'd never be there, so I wouldn't see him there. So I was like at the intermediate kind of, you know, like level. I never saw him at the beginning. At the beginning, was probably like too slow for him, so I might be tackling a nice long beginner level and an intermediate level. Same with cross-country skiing. I never got beyond just barely intermediate levels cross-country skiing, which also was great fun. And so I saw maybe a couple of times, and then he was gone most of the time on those more advanced ones, was more challenging, go further and higher, whatever. So I couldn't see that. I couldn't share that with him. I like to say that one of the very last time I heard him talk with me about hiking some more was after he'd gone into retirement committee that I wasn't too sure what. Oh, I lived. He didn't give me a whole lot of details. Like, I'm not too sure what this retirement committee was, but I knew he wasn't driving anymore, and I knew he was starting to have some trouble with vision. I'm not too sure how much, exactly what it was, because like he didn't tell me very much. But he was asking me about how he could get onto a hike. And I said, well, you know, there's actually couple leaders who will meet in Folsom, right off of 50, right off of Folsom Boulevard. Is like back next door to Chili's. Across the other way is the McDonald's. And there is like, I think, a drop off for people who, there's a bus or something like that. And I was trying to figure out how to get him over there, because he needs this phone number. I was getting, Barney, okay, I'll call you when I'm gonna go for a hike, and then I'm gonna meet in that area. I'll tell you about it so that you can come along or whatever. But it never happened because I don't know what it was, a problem. I was thinking like, gee, wherever he was living, maybe it's too far of a walk to get to this meeting spot at Chili's, you know, outside of Chili's. I don't know, but that was his last time he talked to me about like, I'm still gonna keep on hiking, you know, I wanna go on the hikes up there, whatever, and it's like, it was not gonna be held back or be discouraged about whatever his shortcomings were or his disability, I had no idea. But then the very last time I actually saw him was actually at Betsy's house for one of Betsy and Monty's big parties, birthdays and whatever. That was the very last time I saw him. And he obviously someone gave him a ride, and he just looked fine. You know, it's like in good shape and very friendly, talkative, and he just seemed fine. I had no idea like how bad his eyesight was, I've been diagnosed just last year with AMD, and so, but I'm really lucky, it's because I caught it early and I'm just getting treatment and all that. Also know about the little arthritis, I have a little of that too, but you know what, he's right, gotta keep moving. But I would say, don't start jumping around too soon. Make sure the muscles are really strong, and then, you know, then it's not so bad when you do the more active stuff. And I wanna let you know, I had a dream about him this morning, very late morning before I got out of bed. Oh my God, Barney was in my dream. So I'm not gonna tell you the whole thing, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, like, I belong to a dream group, and we actually we women meet every month to talk about our dreams and try to interpret them. And I can't believe we've been doing this 9 years. In fact, I'm gonna see them tomorrow. Maybe I'll tell them about my Barney dream and they can help me interpret it. But I'll just tell you that little bit that's not so weird. Actually, we were sitting down and I talked to Barney about the story he told me about being in Mexico and eating fried blood. I just said that to him. You know, and that was kind of nice too, and we just share something. And why would he be in my dream? Only because I've been thinking about him. I couldn't believe that he'd gone. I didn't believe he was that old. And you know, so Betsy over there said, well, you want to go? I said, yeah. Well, so I want information to get out of here, to get over here. And so I think that because I was thinking about him was part of why he became my dream. And I want to answer your questions as much as I can. I'm a firm believer about the afterlife. And I've done a lot of studying of that, reading, and you know, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medium, but I watch and listen to them. I read books that have their information, and so a lot of it sounds to me makes a lot of sense. And I am a logical, scientific oriented kind of person. So that something feels truthful, I don't care if other people say that's crazy. To me, it's like it feels truthful. And so that's why I am not afraid to learn about reincarnation, stuff like that. So some of the things I learned about the people pass on that they may appear in your dream to want to say goodbye. Usually to say, I'm fine, don't worry about me, goodbye, whatever. But actually they hang around because what I've learned is that if you think about them a lot, and especially you have a good relationship with them, they're here. So he's here, he's watching us having a good time, and just because he's so happy to see all of you here. I'm sure about that. And the other one is people might appear in your dreams alive or passed on because they represent a particular quality, and that quality is important in your dream, and it has to do about you sharing that particular quality about them. So that could be it too. And there may be some other reasons, but I don't know what those other reasons are, except for my case, like, probably because I was talking about him and he was in my dream. There's something else I also want to say about what that is. Oh, I'm not a religious person either. I have many religious friends, and when I was very young, I was curious about them going to church. And as I got older, I found out that's not for me. But when I went hiking and I went out in the wilderness, I like, wow, that is my spirituality. It's a connection with that, connection with this huge energy, this huge presence that is just something you just have to know with your own heart, your own spirit. Like that's it. That with fault of the Creator or God or whatever. That's what I found out from going through years of hiking, especially out in the wilderness, where it's so beautiful and I feel so connected to that. It's like going to church. You can't match this. And so, like, you know, I respect people's right to their religion, whatever. But for me, I gotta be out there connected. And so, am I talking too long? But anyway, I'm wrapping it up. So, I can understand Monty saying, like, that's his church going out there. But I feel the same way. Thank you.
I was lucky to meet Barney when I was 29. He was 60. We met on a backcountry ski outing on top of Melissa Corey Peak, which is actually one of only 2 peaks in California named after a woman, and pretty darn far out in the greens. And so I found myself thinking, well, gosh, this guy's, we were having lunch, and he was sitting pretty near where I was. There were about 10 of us, but finally got to know him a little bit more, and just thought, wow, this is a really nice guy. And then as we started to ski, I thought, just because we had just mainly gone up to get to the peak, then I saw him descend, and I'm like, holy smokes, this is
one of the best telemark skiers I've ever had the chance to behold. And somehow, so I was 29, he was 60, but somehow I was able to figure out this is a person who's very dear, and I should continue to get to know him. So he and I ended up becoming just wonderful, great friends. One of my absolute best friends ever on earth. I have to include my dear wife, Celia, who's filming over there. But we ended up doing far more than 500 outings together. A lot of those were backcountry skis, but then as he got older, we started doing more hiking. And I think one that was especially fun for me, just thinking about his willingness to just be a gift and beautiful to others. We were climbing this peak, Mount Conness, on the eastern side of Yosemite. And it wasn't enough to go, I had a route figured out, and he goes, well, that's a good route, we'll go up that route. But then as we're going up, he sees these really tricky knife-like ridges, and says, well, why don't we just wander over there? I'm like, I don't think I can do that. He goes, no, you can do it. So we get up there, and holy smokes, he's a little bit ahead of me, and I said, Barney, I'm stuck. I don't think I can go up or down. And he says, no problem. So he goes zipping around just like it's nothing. And I'm, my leg is like sewing machine leg, scared. And he's just zipping around. The next thing I know, it's like this leprechaun appears below me. He's like, hey, I'm going to give you a foothold here. And so and that's just metaphoric for him as a person, that he loved the outdoors so much and wanted to share his love. And if it was too much for you, he'd find a way to help out. And I should add, so we summited the peak. We didn't do any more. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to do any more detours like that. But then on the way down, here we are into mid-September or so. I know the year was 1993. And then he says, well, we don't really need to go down the same way we went up. And I mean, Dave and Christina know that peak, but it's a pretty significant peak. He goes, no, let's go down the steeper way. So the steeper way, it turns out, that was a heavy snow year. So it was massive snow all down this crazy steep thing. And for people who know about snow in the spring, and of course this was September, so the sun had worked on it all summer, and it forms what are called the sun cups, and they become bigger and bigger with time. So these were, it's kind of interesting that they were VW, they were like his bug size sun cups. So you'd go sliding in one side, oh man, and there's rocks in them and all kinds of stuff. And then you have to climb up the other side that was steep. And so we just went down 1 million sun cups down this steep way, and finally had a wonderful dinner at Tioga Pass Resort on the eastern side of Yosemite. But I mean, that was just one of, and we probably did like 700 to 800 outings together over the years. And one thing that was always clear is how much he loved sharing about his family. So although all of you, only know me to an extent, I mean, it's a little embarrassing, but he just, his love just shined through. And so every single one of you, he had all, not that I can remember them all, I'm 64, starting to forget, but he just shared so many wonderful, beautiful stories about you all, about how proud he is. One of you is a speech pathologist, and he shared about how you weren't sure what you wanted to do as a career, but he noticed that you were good with language, and he thought, wow, what about speech pathology? And I think you might have been, I'm not sure how old you were at that point, but his perception was, you kind of thought, well, I don't know about that, Granddad, and shelved it away, and now you're a speech pathologist. So he just planted all these beautiful seeds in people. And then I just really wanted to share too, so when I was 29 and he was 60, it's like, man, this old guy, he can really just tear it up every way in life. And so, I mean, even in my world of friends, I was living in the valley, and then at some point he was up in Truckee. He was like a legend even among my friends. And So they would have like expressions like, you Barney did, or because as you're getting older and still do something. And then I really like the way his son Will talked about pivoting. What I learned from him, I call it scrambling, that I'm just going to keep, and I've had to do it some in life with injuries, but just keep scrambling. And I've even shared with my wife and son, if it gets to the point that I can't enjoy the outdoors because my legs aren't working, then gosh darn it, I want to get out. If I somehow can get my brain to do it, I want to get out there and crawl. I mean, I still want to be out there and enjoy all that beauty. So I'm just ridiculously grateful and unbelievable. He lives till 95, and Christina was sharing with me, at 95 you get to go. But the softer side of me is just like, there's a hole in my heart. Like, the only other time I've experienced it was when I lost my mom. She died young at age 63. But other than that, this is the biggest, and I can't, I feel bad I haven't written the kids' cards yet because I still am having trouble wrapping my head around the fact that he's not here. But anyway, thank you so much. And he did emphasize he wants me to stay in touch with the family, so I know I would sure love to do that if that's okay.